Hey there, Headless Commerce Summit. Today, we're going to take the Jamstack and make it Jammin. We're going to learn how you can create an accessible, inclusive, and social web experience utilizing an omni-channel strategy. Let's hop in. I'm Ray. I'm a developer advocate at BigCommerce, and I'm having fun building projects with the Jamstack. And you can see those projects by following me on Twitter as @Rachael Thompson, or you can always reach out to @BigCommerceDevs. With that, let's just get right into it. So you may be wondering, how does omnichannel fit in with headless commerce? This is an excellent question. I see it as an analogy. Omnichannel is to headless, as strategy is to architecture. One comes before the other, typically. If we think about it in terms of a business strategy, business leadership is probably reading in Gartner about composable commerce, and it's this hot new theory that they want to go after. It's about buying and selling online through all the channels, as well as utilizing your POS or different in-person selling opportunities. So, they're taking all of the APIs that they can and utilizing them in this composable commerce strategy. But what does that mean? They take that to their CTO and they say, figure out how to do this. And we as technologists are looking at architectural patterns that will enable this strategy. And that's how I see this, is we're taking this omnichannel strategy and we're applying the Jamstack architecture in order to create this composable commerce theory of buying and selling online. Is your mind blown now? I know that that's a lot. But if we think about it, selling online is just, another way in which we use the internet every day. And so our omni-channel strategy should really be implemented with that in mind and utilizing accessibility and inclusion. And this really should be thought out from the beginning. This is something that ensures that our business can thrive. People with different abilities are always on the lookout for brands that meet their needs, because most of the internet really doesn't meet their needs. And this is not all on a development team. The business plays a heavy role, but the developer role is pivotal to making the messaging of that business really pop. Did you know that 15% of the world's population has some form and a difference of ability? And that can really impact how they access the internet. And this is even greater of a number in terms of the US population. The US population has like 19% of its population that has some difference in ability. This needs to jog us into thinking about this new normal. What is normal? Is normal a way that we provide who we are as a person and brands respond with a site that is normal for us? And I think if we start thinking of it this way, we can really utilize these Jamstack technologies, these API-driven events, to create a more accessible and inclusive web experience, especially as we're building out a commerce site. So with that, I want us to think about this in terms of a use case. And this is a very simple use case. We're a commerce site selling mostly clothing, and we need our site to be WCAG compliant with an inclusive design that leverages social media like Facebook Shops and Instagram. And this is a big task, but let's break it down into the core components: accessibility, inclusion, and adding those networks. So you might be thinking, what does Jammin even mean? And it's really just my play on words, so I want this to stick with us. When we think about accessibility and inclusion, we want the Jamstack to be Jammin'. And that will make our headless commerce sites just that much more special. And it's important in this omni-channel strategy to think about accessibility and inclusion baked into every level. So we're going to go through some ways that you can do that now. I want you to think about the structure of your data model and how you might manipulate things like your descriptive text in your data model, ensuring that we have descriptions for product images and videos, transcriptions of those videos, color descriptions for things like your swatches, and allow for longer character lengths on your data fields so that these descriptions can be very descriptive and very involved, and the marketing team can very much give the right tone and inclusivity to these product descriptions and color descriptions. And also think about allowing for non-ASCII characters. This is an accessibility feature because people might be utilizing keyboards like an emoji keyboard if they can't spell well, or they have some kind of ability difference in how they utilize a keyboard. So if you allow for non-ASCII characters, you allow for those people to interact. And you can also use this as an inclusivity piece because someone might have non-standard characters as a part of their name, for instance. So if you can open these up and be more inclusive, you're allowing people to really interact with your site in a new way. And we can also integrate things like feature flags. And this is great into utilizing segmentation. So a customer might say that they have low vision, and you can create a high contrast version of your site that is displayed to them on a feature flag. You can also think about this for features like text to speech or speech to text for people who have limited ability to utilize a keyboard. As well, think of this as like just generally allowing for experiences that could be optimized to a person's needs. Feature flags don't have to be just for what you're prepared to release and what you're not prepared to release. These could really be utilized in a variety of ways to create a more accessible web. And lastly, I want us to think about accessibility in terms of our commerce layer. Do we surface graceful error handling? And is there a way to optimize those errors so that they are displayed to a user in a way that is meaningful to them? So I want to show this example, and even though it is not a fashion brand, Yeti Cycles has implemented this headless site, and you can see their use of ARIA labels. It is very easy to navigate while using Chromevox, so shout out to Yeti Cycles for making this inclusive and accessible website. Now I want us to focus specifically on inclusion. And with inclusion, I want us to think of the 3 C's. We have a CMS, a CDN, and our components. Our CMS, we want to be developer friendly, but we really want this to be business implemented and owned. The developers might set it up, they might train the teams, but this is a business tool. This is what the business can use to make changes, to be more inclusive, to have ownership of the messaging. And so if we can find a CMS that utilizes Jamstack technologies and allows the business to interact with the development team, then I think we are on the right track to creating an inclusive site for our headless commerce. Next, I want us to think about our CDN. And CDNs create inclusivity a couple of ways, but the biggest one is there are people all over the world who have limited access to the internet. And when they do, a site needs to be cached and delivered to them through a CDN. And if we think about it that way, we are including more people into the brand experience and being able to interact with our brand online. It also helps because you can host images or content that is culturally relevant, and then you can use your CDN network to push those images to that area specifically based on what is culturally relevant in that area. And also in our components, we can take and we can generate images and marketing materials based on a user's choice. So Old Navy has a great example of this that I'm going to show in the next slide. But the user can also, use components to have user-defined settings, or you could have these components leverage those feature flags we talked about. So when we talk about inclusion, try to remember those 3 C's: the CMS, the CDN, and the components. And let's go look at that Old Navy example real quick. So some things that I want to call out here. It's really easy to navigate with a screen reader. It tabs easily. And this is the component that I love. It's the fits component. And you can see models of different sizes based on what you choose. And this is a very smart feature for Old Navy. Shout out to you guys for being inclusive and making people feel comfortable on the web. And lastly, we're going to round this out really quickly by going over some ways that you can include social networks. And you might be wondering, can I as a developer really even do anything with social networks? There are loads you can do with social networks. You can assist the business in running data analysis and finding the best social networks for them to invest in. You can do data science efforts with the data that you gather from those social networks. And you can empower the BI tools that the business uses by feeding data from social networks into those. You can leverage APIs. So if you're working with a commerce platform like BigCommerce, for instance, you could leverage our existing relationships with those networks, or you can use their APIs, bespokely and create custom integrations to do this. You can also pull data from these platforms and have this social insurance where you can keep that data and understand for the future what customers are trending in. And this really leads into my last point with social networks is you can also leverage machine learning and AI here. This is a treasure trove of data, and this can improve things like customer segmentation, price optimization, and how you target and track your campaigns by channel. I have an example here of just some quick things that I love of social. So the Texas Farmers Market through the pandemic has provided ideas on how to utilize farm fresh produce. Offbeat Bride has used Pinterest to grow their brand with colorful, fun, and inclusive images. And Aditi Candles has used Twitter to do some social campaigning where they helped the pandemic in India by providing masks. So these are some brands that have just really stepped up and utilized social to impact their brand awareness. So with that, let's just keep the good times jamming. I want us to think about this while we're always working on a Jamstack site. How can we make the Jamstack jammin'? How can we make it accessible, inclusive, and networked? And with that, that's it. This is how we make the Jamstack jammin'. So Jamstackers and Headless Commerce community, this has been a great time. I will be online for Q&A after, but my team and I would love for you to join our community. At BigCommerce, we are technologists helping technologists. We're inclusive, and no matter your technology expertise, we're here to help you with your e-commerce. So follow us on Twitter at BigCommerceDevs. You can read our docs at developer.bigcommerce.com. And you can join our community by going to support.bigcommerce.com. And I appreciate you guys for having me today. If you're interested in learning more about BigCommerce, you can go to www.bigcommerce.com/DM/Netlify. Have a great conference. Bye.